Day 102 of 365 days of meditation. Today's practice was about 55 minutes-ish. Maybe an hour, actually. It was probably about an hour. If you're wondering how I know it was an hour, I set some relaxing music in the background, and I can tell by how far it's played into the song. Or if I want to end at a certain time, I will set the song a certain distance from the end so it ends, and that's sort of a gentle reminder to come out of the meditation. Yeah, just music and stillness and just sort of observing my thoughts. I was a little more restless today. Some days are like that. I think in part I didn't sleep as well last night. Part of it was I did some work after dinner, some late night work. And that blue light exposure, never a good idea when it comes to sleep, especially not for me. I find I'm pretty sensitive to it. I think we all are. Melatonin production basically halts the moment we get exposure to bright light in the evening. And yeah, with that blue light, we'll get a kick of cortisol as well. So it's going to be hard to fall asleep. So I think my quality sleep wasn't as good. And as a result, today my brain was a little more scattered. And I know for certainty that if I don't get enough sleep, my mental health suffers dramatically and rapidly. So, yeah, that was it. Other than that, I was having an interesting conversation with a friend today about just the tie-in between maybe how meditation can help you become aware of the sort of thoughts that are running in the background on loop, but also help to slow down the mind almost. I've noticed that the volume of thoughts seems to decrease, and for somebody who's experienced obsessive compulsive disorder, I can tell you the volume of thoughts when you are experiencing that are like 40,000 a second, it seems like. That's an exaggeration, but and then they all seem to be very negative, and once they tip in the direction of negative, they just starts to create a runaway effect. You get more, and they're more negative. But interestingly enough, if you kind of think about what's going on, or I think about what's going on with meditation, I'm able to become aware of the thoughts. I'm able to sort of start to pick and choose, almost weed out the ones that are not helpful, and because I'm slowing down and sort of just noticing, and I'm also to sort of intentionally replace them with something more positive, and I'm able to, just the act of meditation and relaxation seems to slow the mind and the volume of thoughts decreases. And I think that is applicable to anybody. I mean, if you think about that study that I mentioned yesterday where 30% of females and 60% of males would, chose to get an electric shock rather than sitting with their own thoughts for 15 minutes, that means that their own thoughts are so brutal that they would choose physical pain over being with them. So it seems to me that what we deem as mental health issue is something that's sort of running prevalent in society. I mean, 60% and 30%, maybe their volume of thoughts or the negativity of their thoughts is not at a level in which they would be sort of clinically diagnosed with a quote-unquote mental illness. And I hate that term because I think it's not really an illness. I see it as a sort of a malfunction in the way that one is thinking. At least that's my own experience with it. Yeah. If that many people are that uncomfortable with their own thoughts that they would choose physical pain, then that speaks to some greater issue. Maybe they're not clinical, like I said, clinically diagnosable, but I think it's a spectrum, and it is a spectrum, and at some point we draw a line and say, when you're on this side of the line, you're diagnosed with anxiety. You're on this side of the line, you're diagnosed with depression. When you're on this side of the line, you're diagnosed with obsessive compulsive disorder. And if you were just a little bit over on the other side of the line, you would be quote unquote healthy or normal. And really, that's not how the brain works. We just like to categorize and compartmentalize and put things into buckets because that's the way the brain works. That's how it allows us to memorize volumes of information and relate things to one another by sort of categorizing things. But the reality is that if this many people are uncomfortable with their thoughts, then yeah, meditation is helpful to someone who is, clinically diagnosable with anxiety or depression or OCD, or other issues as well. I'm just speaking to the ones that I'm familiar with. But all these other people that are that uncomfortable with their own thoughts as well, they're just on the other side of the line of a clinical diagnosis, somewhere along the spectrum on the other side of the line. And the reality is that, in all likelihood, they could benefit significantly from noticing their own thoughts, changing, sort of weeding out the negative thoughts, calming down the brain, getting into some stillness, reorganizing, restructuring the mind, rewiring the brain in a way that will sort of deliver unwanted thoughts at a slower volume, and then eventually allow you to kind of pick them out as they come by and replace them with something helpful intentionally, and that will spill over in your day-to-day life, and the quality of life will be so much better. Yeah, I don't really know where I'm going with this. It's just a evening ramble, I guess, but there's something about that study that I was just thinking about it again today, and it just really makes me think that these, the line that we draw between, a clinical diagnosis and somebody who's just miserable is really just an arbitrary line, and it's a spectrum where you lie on that line in terms of a volume of unwanted intrusive thoughts, which all people experience, and in terms of the impact that they have on your psyche and your mental emotional state, and also the sort of composition of those thoughts in terms of the number of negative ones versus the number of positive or neutral ones. Again, is sort of a spectrum on the line. So I guess what I'm trying to say is that if anybody's watching this and they're experiencing anxiety or depression or obsessive compulsive disorder, that line of that diagnosis that you've been handed, it's on a line. The line is a spectrum. We can shift along that line, and it's not, definitely don't take it as some sort of negative label that you can't shake in your life. What I can tell you from my own experience of anxiety, of depression, and of obsessive compulsive disorder is that they are temporary states of mind that we have fallen into negative habitual states of being that have sort of gained momentum in a direction that we don't want them to go. But it is something that you can get control over. It is not permanent. It is not an illness. And I know some people might take issue with that, but I'm going to stand my ground on that and say, it's not an illness. We are not sick. If you are struggling with your mental health, you are not sick. You are just struggling. There's a difference. And for the vast majority of people, you don't need to be medicated. You just need to have the understanding that you can change the way that your brain is functioning. You can change the thoughts that you're having. You can change your perceptions. It's your perception, and you can change your beliefs around certain aspects of your life. And the fact that you can do that means you can really change who you are as a person fundamentally, at a very deep level. And in doing so, you will dramatically change your experience of life. You will dramatically change your life in general. And that includes dramatically improving your mental health. That's it. I feel like a bit of a sermon today almost. I don't know, but something got me kind of amped up around thinking about that. I don't know if I expressed it as concisely as I could have, but I guess it'll do. We're not going for perfect here. We're going for complete. Anyway, in closing, if you are struggling at all with your mental health, other than what I just said, if you're ruminating excessively, anxious, worrying, depressed, obsessive, talk to somebody, talk to somebody, talk to somebody. Get it out there, get it out in the open. Let's not treat it like it is some sort of incurable illness. Let's not treat it like it's, mental health is, somebody struggling with it is, like a leper or contagious, or they'll contaminate you or something along those lines. They're just a human being somewhere along that spectrum in terms of the volume of thoughts they're having, the the makeup of the thoughts, whether they're negative or positive or neutral, and the effect or the significance they're applying to those thoughts and how it's affecting them mentally, emotionally. That's it. That's all it really is, from my experience. And don't allow others to sort of make you feel less as a result of any mental or emotional struggles you're going through. And if you're watching this, definitely don't make somebody else feel like there's something wrong with them as a result of some mental struggles they're going through. It's temporary if you understand that it can be temporary. That's what I would say. If you understand that it can be a temporary state that you are going through, it may be difficult at the moment. It may be difficult to make the changes necessary to experience a better life, but it's worth it, and it is a temporary state that you can dramatically change. So that's it for today. Thanks for watching. Be good to yourself, be good to others, and the end.